Hello and welcome to another creative coding video. Today I'm really excited to be introducing a new idea which is really powerful. It's very simple, but I use it loads and many algorithmic artists love using it, and you'll see why. Can't wait to get into it. I think the best way to introduce this idea is not to talk about it first, but just to start doing some coding. So as you can see, I'm logged into Open Processing as usual. I've got my simple library enabled. There it is. And I've got simple in the setup just to get things ready and going. In my draw function, I have some really simple instructions. We'll be super familiar with them by now. These were things that we looked at very early on in the course. So let's have a look at them. I've got a fill instruction and a circle instruction, and the same again here. So it looks like I'm drawing two circles, and one should be blue and one should be red. Let's check. Great, that's what we expected. Nothing particularly magic there. Now, as you know, we can define colours not just by the names, but with numbers, and we've already seen two different colour models for doing that. The traditional one, which is RGB, red, green, blue, which is about mixing red, green and blue light to get the colour we want. And then we also saw a more sophisticated, but something that's actually more intuitive after a while, called the HSB colour model, which uses hue, saturation and brightness. But let's stick with RGB for now. So blue is red, green, blue, so it's 0, 0, 255, and red is 255, 0, 0. If you need a reminder about this, do go back and have a look at the earlier videos. So if I run the code again, I should see no change because the first colour is red, green, it's blue because there's no red and green being mixed in, and the next colour is red, green, blue, so red and no green, no blue, so it should result in the same kind of image. Yep, fantastic. Right, now let's try something different. Let's add a fourth number. Now I haven't told you what that is yet. We have three numbers for red, green, blue, but let's add a fourth number. Let's assume it goes from 0 to 255, just like the others. Let's make it 100, and the same here. Don't worry if you don't know what's going to happen. I haven't told you, so this should be a surprise. Let's see what happens when I run the code. That's interesting. What's happened? Well, it looks like we can see through the circles. It looks like the colours have become see-through. Let's see what happens if I change that fourth number to, I don't know, a higher number like 200. Let's see what effect that has. Okay, so the colours look less see-through. They're certainly more intense, and the one on top, the red, is a lot less see-through. Let's try a much lower number. So we had 100 first, let's try 50 now. So the colours are much more pale, much more diluted, and I can definitely see right through those circles. And the nice thing is where they overlap, there's a kind of mixture that happens. That's interesting, isn't it? Let's add another circle in the middle. That was at 400, 300. Let's give it a green colour. Let's see what that does. Yep, so it's green, but a lot of it's overlapping. So we're getting some kind of mixing going on there. That is interesting, isn't it? Now, I think at one level, the way to think about this is, yep, we can now make colours see-through. But I think for algorithmic artists, or anyone just having fun really, the most important thing is that we can now see a lot more detail and pattern from making the shape see-through. So let's take that away. Let's make those colours not see-through and see the difference. It's there. So yes, there are 3 bright colours, but there's none of the circles that were overlapping each other, the mixing of colours. There's none of that detail now. So that's interesting. Let's take this a little further. Actually, before we do, I'm just going to show you a picture just to talk about what we've done. So on this picture, I'm showing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 circles, and you can see that the very first one has no colour at all, and the last one is very deep red, and in between there's a progression of how intense the colour is. But really, it's not really about how intense the colour is, it's about how see-through it is. So you can see some numbers and you can guess that they are related to how see-through the colour is. And the term that's used just through history is alpha, the number that describes how see-through the colour is. So an alpha of 0 or 0% means the colour is totally see-through and there's nothing remaining left of that, of the actual original colour. An alpha of 100% or 100, or if we're using a different scale from 0 to 1, then it might be a full alpha 1. Then we can see that the colour is fully there and we can't see through it at all. So an alpha of 50% is half see-through, and you can see the stripes coming through. And an alpha of a quarter is very diluted in some sense. It's like we've taken the ink and mixed it with water. So that's just some terminology. Another bit of terminology is, technically speaking, correctly speaking, this isn't called transparency, it's called translucency. Now, often people will mix the words, you know, they're interchangeable in some sense, but actually, if we're being very accurate, this is called translucency because there is some colour that we can see. Transparency is when there's nothing in the way at all, so only this alpha 0 is transparent, but people mix the two terms, so there's nothing to kind of worry too much about. But if you see or hear the word translucency, this is what it means. Great, let's get back to some coding. So I'm going to use a loop. I'm going to copy some code here, so I'll just so I'm going to use a loop to write to create lots of circles, let's say 300, and I'm going to call a function called blob, and that function blob is going to draw lots of circles. And I'm going to actually draw them at a random place on the canvas. You've seen me do this many times now. I should almost program one button to type this code, because we use this kind of code quite a lot, don't we? So I'm putting it at a random place on the canvas. Let me give it a random size as well. A random number. Let's see, I don't know, between 50 and 200. Oh, 150. Okay, so I'm placing it at X, Y, with that size. Now, let me get some random colors. In fact, let me switch to HSB mode. So color mode HSB, because it's just much, for me it's much more intuitive to work with. We've covered it before. If you're not familiar, do go back and have a look at the videos. but just to kind of explain what I'm doing, the default way of describing colours is red, green, blue, and we've just done that. But a more intuitive way, after you've kind of understood it, is the HSB colour model. So do go back and have a look at that video if you need a reminder. So I'm going to have a hue, which is kind of like the colour, which is random, let's say between, I don't know, 60 and 120. I'm just making these numbers up. And so the first three numbers are going to be hue, saturation and brightness. So hue, which is the random number, saturation, let's just call it 80, brightness, let's call that 80 as well, out of 100. Let's see what that does for now. We're not going to use translucency. Let's just check if the code works. So 300 blobs on the screen. Yep, there are 300 blobs on the screen. Let me introduce a little bit more color variety there. So let me make that go from 0 to 120. Or to 180. Let's try that. Okay, I've made a type 00 there. It doesn't really matter, it should be 0. Okay, I guess we have some kind of colours there. Actually don't like that colour scheme. Let me change it from 90 to 270. I don't know why I'm picking on the colours, it's not the point of today's video. There you go, that'll do. Okay, so we've got lots of circles, and the composition looks very saturated. There's lots of overlapping circles. It's not actually that fun to look at. Yes, there's some difference in colour and size, but it's not just too busy. There's not a lot of interesting detail to kind of get our eyes into. It's just a big pile of blobs. Let's make a small change. Let's introduce translucency into that same picture. So we're not changing anything else, just the translucency. Now in HSB mode, the fourth number, the alpha value, goes from 0 to 1, not from 0 to 255. So halfway would be 0.5. Let's see what effect that has. Wow, there you go. So it's drastically changed the image. We can see through many of the circles. There's a lot more detail to explore. We can look at this image for a while now. I mean, it's not an award-winning composition, but compared to the other image, let's go back to the other image just to see. In fact, you can make the alpha value 1 to make it like we had it before, so there's no translucency. There you go. Now that isn't that interesting, I think. Whereas if I revert back to translucency of a half, a see-throughness of a half, it's much more interesting. And I can do that to the outlines as well. So if I have stroke, stroke, I can use the same colour, the same hue, same saturation, same brightness, but I can make it slightly less see-through, so I need a higher number like 0.7. Let's see what effect that has. Yeah, that's okay. What if I made them, what if I said no stroke? No stroke. That's interesting. Yeah, I think I do prefer it with a stroke. In fact, I think I prefer it with a black colour. So I'm going to make all those 0. Let's see what effect that has. It's a bit dark. Make that the same translucency. I can make it even more translucent. I didn't think I'd be making the outlines more translucent. Yeah, so you can have fun like this. I guess the important point is, number one, we can make colours translucent, sorry, should get it right. The number one, we can make colours translucent, and that opens up all kinds of possibilities for us. And number two, it allows us to make compositions which do have a lot going on, but instead of them becoming overwhelming and oversaturated, translucency allows us to see more of the detail in a more pleasing way. We'll see more examples of this in later videos because it is a really powerful tool, and I've been waiting to kind of talk about it for ages. So do have a go at it yourself. It's just an extra number when we're describing and picking a colour, whether you're using red, green, blue, or whether you're using HSB. Do experiment, do play. The way to learn is by trying different numbers and seeing the effect. I'm giving this now a translucency of 0.1, so it should be very see-through like that. It's become almost a ring of circles there. There you go. Now let me try and build something a little bit more pleasing. So let me make these circles a bit smaller. Let's say from 30 to 50, so they're not so big. Let me change the colour range so it's slightly more constrained on the colour wheel. Let's see, let's go back to using a colour hue. Hue, saturation, brightness. Let's try that. Make them a little less translucent. So what have I done there? I'm using the hue, the colour, for the fill and the outline. Using the same saturation. I'm making the stroke a little less bright, and this both see-through. Let's see what effect that has. I'm hoping the main effect is that there's many more of the smaller circles. In fact, let me just make those, let's say 600 blobs, not 3600, just 600. Let's see. Wow, look at that. That's much better than what I had before. I quite like that. Do you see, just by experimenting you can suddenly turn something that wasn't quite nice to something a lot more interesting. Now I like this because it's got a quite calm colour palette, very kind of pastel-y blues and greens, like the sea in the countryside, I guess. The colours are nice and soft and not very kind of contrasty, which I like for this image. And the circles are similar in size but still small. But it wouldn't work, I don't think, if the colours weren't translucent. So let's do that kind of comparison again. Let's get rid of that fourth number. There you go. There. That's not so interesting, is it? It's not bad, but I think that's much nicer. I like that. Yeah. Now, just as a final experiment, I'm going to go back to RGB mode, and I'm not going to use colours. I'm just going to have black and white. So let's say no stroke. So no stroke. So there's no outline, only a fill colour, and I'm using red, green, blue. So 0, 0, 0 is black. So these should be black circles. Just lots of black circles, 600 black circles. There. Ugh, that's horrible. And now if I make them see-through, when it draws, maybe they've made them too see-through. Let's make them, oh no, it's red, green, blue, isn't it? So it goes from 0 to 255. Easy mistake to make. Let's make them, I don't know, 50. There. Now, compared to that mass of black and white, so it's just black circles, this is just more interesting, isn't it? let's go back again. So black, 600 black circles. Ooh, not pleasing at all. Add translucency. What a dramatic difference. I mean, that's what I really want you to see is, yes, it's fun to make colours see through and mix them a little bit, but for me, one of the most powerful things that comes from that is the ability to take a busy composition and make it more workable by allowing us to see more of the overlaps, more of the patterns, see through more of the image. Yes, it's as busy, but it's more interesting to look at. It's not oversaturated. So I really wanted to kind of get that message across. Anyway, I will stop there. I've been doing quite long videos recently, so I hope that's been really interesting. We will use translucency loads, and everyone does. It's such a powerful thing, but it's so simple. So I'm really pleased to kind of share that with you. Do have a go, do experiment. If you're using red, green, blue, then the alpha value goes from 0 to 255, and if you're using, let me say that again. And if you're using red, green, blue, then the alpha value goes from 0 to 255, just like the red, green and blue channels. If you're using HSB, then it goes from 0 to 1. But you'll soon find out if you're going to get them wrong. No harm is done. Do experiment. Okay, go and have fun. This is really cool. I think you'll really enjoy it. I'll see you next time.